Hey everyone, this is Thyworm with a new build for Last Epoch, the Lightning Mage. This video is aimed at beginners looking for a greater leveling and endgame build. If you are enjoying Last Epoch content, consider subscribing. Let's start with the build philosophy. My main inspiration here is Enki's Archwitch from Path of Exile, an excellent beginner's guide to get into this game. It's fast, it's versatile and it's ideal for beginners. I hope to do the same here for Last Epoch with detailed descriptions on skill choices, playstyle, passives and gear. It's excellent for new players. There's one caveat with this build however, or at least with its main skill, Lightning Blast. Some people, including myself, have crashes of the game client because of Lightning Blast. That is an inconvenience, but really nothing more than that in my opinion. Not everyone has these issues and it's not consistent either. Sometimes I crash 3 times in an hour, sometimes I don't crash all day. It is something the devs are looking into, but at the moment of writing this, it is not fixed. So what is this build really about? It's mostly a very simple build, suited towards newcomers. It has only one damage skill that's very safe because it can be used from long distances and does good damage. The other skills have a clear purpose as well and they will help you understand some of the core concepts in the game while leveling and destroying enemies at the same time. There are no special gear requirements. The build uses no uniques. Everyone can craft the items needed, even without optimized gear. Damage output and defenses are high. Let me touch on 2 more things here. 1. I would encourage you, apart from following a build guide, to also experiment yourself with builds. It is an excellent way to get a better understanding of the game if that is what you're looking for. And Last Epoch isn't very complicated while offering depth at the same time. If you're not interested in that, just keep looking at guides and play the game that way. There's nothing wrong with it and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. 2. Because this is targeted at beginners, this isn't the most optimal Lightning Blast build you can make and I am aware of that. My builds are however not always about what is the best damage and defense, but sometimes they cover other themes as well, like a specific skill, such as Tempest Strike, or a build specific to a certain type of player, like this build. This guide will provide you with a very smooth first character or first mage, both during the campaign and in endgame. I'm level 77 now, we're making arena runs wave 100 with ease, monoliths are a breeze, damage is high with hardly any investment in gear. Let's look at the passives. There are only a few stats that we want for this build. For defense we use ward, which means we want ward generation and ward retention. Ward generation ensures you get ward in the first place, ward retention ensures you keep that ward for longer. Ward is an energy shield that decays over time, the more ward you have. Ward retention slows the decay, so we have more ward for a longer time. You can get flat ward retention and intelligence provides 4% ward retention per point as well. In terms of damage, you can hover over skills on the skill bar and press Alt. You will see how different stats impact these skills. Lightning Blast gets 4% increased damage per point of intelligence. You see the synergy? Intelligence provides both offense and defense. It's a great stat to invest into. We're looking for flat damage and scaling damage. Flat damage basically is the base damage number, while scaling damage are percentage increases of that base damage number. This concept works for most stats in the game because crit chance, crit damage and protections all work in a similar way. Speaking of crit chance, we also invest in crit chance and base crit to increase our damage significantly. With this in mind, let's look at the passives. We take 8 out of 8 Arcanist because we like intelligence, 2 out of 8 Elementalist for scaling our flat elemental damage, which is mostly lightning damage, 1 out of 10 Reactive Ward because it is required to get to 5 out of 5 Warden. Warden provides ward retention. It is an extremely good passive and 50% ward retention is a lot. Take 5 out of 5 Flurry because cast speed increases damage, and finally 4 out of 10 Knowledge of Destruction, increasing crit chance and crit damage. I have 5 points in there now as I'm investing points there now that I'm level 77. Don't put more than 20 points in your base class however when you are leveling. All other points go into Sorcerer. Take 8 out of 8 Calculated Destruction for a lot of increased spell crit chance. 2 out of 8 Brainstorm for extra spell damage. Take 5 out of 5 Arcane Momentum for cast speed after you have cast a spell, which is always, so this is just a permanent 25% increased cast speed. 10 out of 10 wisdom because 10 intelligence is a no-brainer. 8 out of 8 Seronomancer for lightning damage and shock chance. Shock chance lowers enemy resistances to elemental damage. The Seronomancer nodes are picked up around level 70 however because you want other nodes first. Nodes like Crackling Precision for example, 8 out of 8 for more crit chance multipliers, and its follow-up Arcane Obliteration 5 out of 5 for spell crit multiplier, which basically makes your crits do 50% more damage. Arcane Insight is a truly fantastic node for our build. It gives 10 intelligence, which is amazing, and it provides a buff, Insight. With how fast we're casting Lightning Blast, this buff is always active, granting 20% increased elemental damage and 20% water retention, which is extremely valuable. In the top of the tree we find flat spell damage in the form of adaptive spell damage. It's adaptive because it adapts to the skill, so adaptive spell damage when using Lightning Blast becomes flat lightning damage. And flat lightning damage is extremely good because it adds to the flat base lightning damage numbers that all other multipliers are scaling off of, especially on gear. 5 out of 5 Spellslinger is really good, 5 out of 5 Archmage as well. It's not that easy to have less than 200 mana, as you get an additional point of mana each time you level, but that is fine. Just the 5 flat spell damage is good enough, we don't need it tripled for this build guide. Skill specialization. We have 5 skills, each with a very specific purpose, which I will explain before we dive into the skill nodes of each skill. Of course, we're starting with Lightning Blast, the bread and butter of this build. Lightning Blast is our only damage skill. We want it to be versatile and do massive damage, that's all. So first you take 4 out of 4 Arcane Power, which turns the skill into Chain Lightning, ideal for killing groups. Also take Surging Influence, making the change cover greater distance and thus killing more enemies. Super useful node. Then, increasing the damage of the skill, take 5 out of 5 Front Loaded for a massive damage boost. We can multicast Lightning Blast up to 4 times even. Take 4 out of 4 Overcharge, increasing double cast chance and crit multiplier, and then take Hypercharge, which provides a quadruple cast. Because our cast speed is so high, this happens all the time. We take 3 out of 3 Storm Razor, which increases the base crit chance of this skill by 3%. Normally the crit chance is 5% and now with this node it is 8%. Finally, take Lightning Attunement, which offers both protections and offense. Lightning Aegis as a buff gives 50% increased lightning damage and also 25% less damage taken, which is pretty huge. The second skill you specialize into will be Flame Ward, because it reduces incoming damage by 30% and it generates a bunch of ward. Like I mentioned, ward is our main form of defense, which explains our choices in this tree. We're taking all the ward we can get, so start top right with 5 out of 5 Stalwart Defense, then 4 out of 4 Concentrated Shielding, 1 point in Fortification, 3 out of 3 Fuel the Flames, and finally Invigorate. What this entire setup does is this. 1. It removes the flame retaliation from Flame Ward. 2. It provides a shitload of ward at the expense of the duration of Flame Ward. And 3. It changes the skill from providing burst ward into gradually increased ward, ultimately giving us much more ward overall. The reason is that ward decays faster the higher the ward numbers. By spreading out our ward generation, we have less decay, we can use the available ward much more efficiently. Now that you have a neat little ward generator, let's increase it a bit more with 2 out of 5 Dilation, just to get to 4 out of 4 Energize for even more ward generation. You should autocast this spell, so you always generate ward. You can use Numlock to do this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google this, because this is a trick for many games and it's a high quality of life feature. Our third skill is Teleport, which functions as an escape tool. You want to get out of tricky situations and this skill is perfect for that. As a nice side effect, it generates ward and it increases our damage. Take 5 out of 5 Ether Barrier for ward generation. Take 3 out of 3 Out of Body. Losing health is fine, we have ward anyway, and this gives us twice the ward for the health consumed. Good deal. 5 out of 5 Stable Bubble, because ward retention is very important. Take Out of Mind too, because we end up having a lot of intelligence, so this node is worth it. Take 5 out of 5 Elemental Affinity, providing 50% elemental damage after using the skill. Finally, take Unstable Arrival, increasing your chances of survival if you accidentally port into a group of enemies. At least with this node, they will be knocked back and you won't instantly die. I would advise, however, to not escape to a place where there are enemies, preferably. Our fourth skill is Arcane Ascendance, which acts as a temporary DPS boost. The way the skill works is that it locks you in place, it gives you big buffs and damage output, and then stops working, freeing you and going on a pretty long cooldown. It takes a little while to get the hang of this, but we'll talk about playstyle soon. Normally, Arcane Ascendance is a very expensive skill to use, immediately draining you of mana. We're going to fix that. Take 3 out of 3 Power Sprint, just to get to Acuity, which makes the skill free to use, for only 4 spells, and now it adds a cooldown to the skill. We can improve this by 3 out of 3 Cunning, increasing the spells we can cast up to 12, but also once again increasing the cooldown. What we have essentially done is removing a big part of the mana drain while decreasing how long we can use the buffed up effects. And that is totally fine, because you can't use Arcane Ascendance for that long anyway, because you would run out of mana or you get surrounded by enemies and you get killed. So taking these nodes isn't really a downside. We continue with 4 out of 5 Rebuff for extra ward, and then we travel west towards 5 out of 5 Higher Place, increasing the spell damage the skill generates. Take 1 point in Superconductor, which means you're starting to cast lightning blasts every second Arcane Ascendance is active, which is cool because this uses the skill tree of Lightning Blast. And finally, 3 out of 3 Closed Circuit, increasing the frequency we cast Lightning Blast. Needless to say, when activating this, you start casting a lot of very fast, very powerful lightning blasts all over the screen, obliterating all but the strongest enemies, which is very satisfying to do if executed properly. If you mess this skill up, you basically die. But that's a good way to learn, I found. Our last skill is a crowd control skill. It's Black Hole. It pulls enemies in and deals high damage. We don't care about the damage, however, we care about the crowd control effects. Take 3 out of 3 Stability, increasing the Black Hole duration, and 3 out of 3 Endless Maw for more duration. Take the Scattered node, creating an additional Black Hole. It completely messes up the graphics and physics in the game because enemies can't decide anymore which black hole they want to get devoured by, resulting in some pretty hilarious scenes, but that's not important. What is important is that the enemies don't reach us, which is why you want 5 out of 5 Intensity, increasing the radius of black hole, pulling enemies in from further, and 5 out of 5 Massive, increasing the pool area. Finally, we take 1 out of 5 Umbral Core just to get the Cascade Fracture, which gives a 20% chance on black hole expiry to create another black hole. We get black holes for days here, all over the place. It's quite beautiful and a total physics mess, but that's totally fine. Gear. Gear is very straightforward. You want intelligence, flat ward generation, adaptive spell damage, crit, and you want to be glancing blow capped. What you don't want is anything else, honestly, particularly protections and armor. Protections and armor are useless in high ward builds, which you can see by activating Flame Ward while you look at my character sheet. Right now, my armor mitigates 46% of incoming physical damage. Watch what happens as I activate Flame Ward, basically giving me 2500 ward or so. Mitigation drops to 22%. It's less than half of what it used to be, and this is just casting Flame Ward once. Normally, you have it on autocast, you use other skills generating ward. It is not uncommon to be at 4k ward in the arena, rendering armor and protections useless, and only mitigating 10 to 15% of damage if they would be there in the first place, which is simply not worth it. Instead, get more ward. Glancing Blow is a different story. Glancing Blow is just flat reduction of damage. Always get 100% Glancing Blow because it reduces all incoming damage by 50%, no matter how much effective health or ward or armor or protections you have. Glancing Blow is a must-have for any build and you can achieve it by crafting. Dodge would be your third defensive layer after Glancing Blow and ward. I don't have much of it yet because my gear is far from optimized, but I'm also trying to make a point here because you don't need optimized gear to make this build work. The idols are very interesting, and like in most builds, idols offer a good opportunity for variety. I went very offensive with my idols, focusing on lightning damage, crit and a bit of ward generation. If you want more defenses, get idols with ward retention on it. Those are really good. Because ward is important, you definitely want a catalyst in your offhand. These things go up to 40 ward generated per second, which is huge. That means don't equip a shield, and don't take a staff either. Yes, a staff has more adaptive spell damage, but defense is important, especially in endgame. You can level with the staff all you want, be my guest, but once you start doing monoliths and arena, drop it for a ward generating Aegis. The only ring that's not rare is a set item. This is a super common drop. It is great for our build because 13 flat lightning damage is hard to find. But if you don't have this ring, just craft another intelligence based ring. If I would upgrade my gear from this point onward, I would be equipping the Bone Clamor Barbute for more ward, the Exsanguinous for more ward, a better Aegis for more ward, and optimized gear by getting rid of the useless affixes. Increased armor on my chest, for example, is crap. Cold protection on my wand as well. I would replace those with dodge affixes, but those are minor details and not important. Just focus on the basics first. About leveling, I made an entire video on how I leveled this character, so I'm going to refer you to that. Check the card in the description. Finally, the playstyle during endgame. Here's the build in action. There's a certain order in which you do things. You want to keep your distance to the enemies. Use teleport to keep escaping from dangerous packs. If you're safe, spam lightning blast again. When facing bosses and tough enemies, use the black hole. You want to teleport away first. Then you cast a black hole to keep them trapped in place. Then activate Arcane Ascendance, buffing your damage a lot, and then spam lightning blast. This combo absolutely melts anyone inside the black hole. You deal massive amounts of damage this way. Rinse and repeat when necessary. Apart from that, the build is pretty self-explanatory. Make sure to autocast Flame Ward. Make sure to practice social distancing from enemies. Make sure to control the battlefield using supermassive black holes. You're going to be fine. I hope you have fun with the build and that this guide was useful. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. See you all soon. Bye bye.